Hello and welcome to this special presentation on Rajya Sabha television. I am Vishal Dahiya. The upper house of the parliament, that is Rajya Sabha, is all set to cross a very significant milestone in its journey, and that is the 250th session of the upper house. Now, the first session of Rajya Sabha was held in the month of May in 1952, and since then the journey of the upper house has been quite interesting. It has made very significant contributions overall in terms of legislative scrutiny as well as various other aspects. Now, in this particular special presentation, we wish to bring to you the role, contribution and the journey of the upper house of Indian Parliament in the overall parliamentary democracy which we have. And for this, we have a very esteemed panel of guests with us, and also a number of young minds, the youngsters who definitely have some questions to ask to all these experts. So let me first introduce the guests to you. And the first guest which we have with us is Dr. Vinay Sahasrabudhe. He is the Member of Parliament in the upper house from the ruling party, that is the Bharatiya Janata Party. We also have with us Mr. D. Raja, former Member of Parliament from CPI. He is presently General Secretary of the party, and also Dr. Abhishek Manu Singhvi, Member of Parliament from Congress, and Dr. K. Keshwar Rao, again Member of Parliament from TRS, that is Telangana Rashtra Samiti. We also have with us Mr. A. Surya Prakash, the Chairman of Prasar Bharati and a senior journalist, somebody who has kept a close watch on the developments in the parliamentary domain and otherwise as well. So let's begin the show, and let's begin the show by trying to understand all about this second house of the Indian Parliament, that is the upper house, Council of States, Rajya Sabha. And let me begin with you, Mr. Surya Prakash, trying to understand as to how and why this upper house, the second house, was born.
Actually, in the course of my research, I have found that there are 87 nations in the world which have bicameral parliament. So it's an idea which is quite popular worldwide. But let me begin with an anecdote. You see, when the American Constitution was being written, George Washington and Thomas Jefferson had a major disagreement on the constitution of the second chamber. Thomas Jefferson was totally opposed to it. So they had their discussions, broke up. Next morning when they met over breakfast, Washington found Jefferson pouring coffee into his saucer and drinking it. So Washington asked him, Mr. Jefferson, why are you pouring coffee into your saucer? Jefferson said, to cool it. He said, that's exactly the point of the Senate, the second house. It is to cool legislation. It is said that after that conversation, Jefferson was convinced, and in 1789, the two houses were constituted in America. So, globally afterwards, in various democracies, the idea of bicameral legislation picked up, and so also our constitution makers felt that we must have a second house. But it didn't happen just like that. In the Constituent Assembly, there were a lot of people who had very serious objection to a second house. In fact, there were Muhammad Tahir, a member of the Constituent Assembly. He said the upper house will be an imperialist tool, so you should never have a second chamber, and it will, it will impede the work of the democratically elected Lok Sabha.
Okay.
Then you had Professor Shibunlal Saxena. He said it is a clog in the wheel of progress and it has not helped any country anywhere. So you should not have a second chamber. But of course, you had Gopal Swami Iyengar, Ananta Shayanam Iyengar and many others who said that nothing doing. This is, it will checkmate hasty legislation. This will be a chamber of wise men and women. They will deliberate. It will be a deliberative chamber. They will not be caught in the thicket of politics like those in the lower house. It will be deliberative, and it's very important for the overall idea of legislating and looking at policy that you have a second house.
Okay.
So ultimately, that's how the idea of a second house came into being, and we have that in our constitution.
Okay, and further to discussions, this was decided that we should have the second house. Dr. Sahasrabudeen, now let me begin with you as to how do you see the overall, birth or rise, if we say, of the second house in the Indian parliamentary system?
Well, I think the framers of the constitution very thoughtfully conceived this idea of the second chamber, and if you look at the history of 250 sessions, I think it really has played a very important role, a key role, and as was rightly pointed out by Surya Prakash ji, that cooling down, I mean cooling the tempers, then having a more kind of restrained discussion coming out of the lure of populism for that matter. All these things definitely matter when you deliberate on a particular piece of legislation, and that generally speaking appears that the Rajya Sabha has served this particular cause, the very intention behind the creation of the second chamber. But I would definitely say that the upper house also has a provision of president's nominees, and that is something which is a very uncommon in the sense in no lower house you have this provision. So these are nominated members coming from various walks of life. I believe time has come that we should have a re-look at this provision and also assess the contribution of all the very honorable nominees of the president, because they have a role whether this particular provision has definitely really contributed into the deliberations that are happening. I mean, those who get appointed through this provision.
Okay.
This requires, I believe, some kind of a assessment so that we can definitely think of any kind of reforms, if at all this particular occasion demands that we should have a re-look at these provisions.
Okay, that's a very significant food for thought on the occasion of 250th session. Let me have Mr. D. Raja's views here and a response to what Mr. Sahasrabudeen is also saying with respect to the nominated members.
No, firstly, we should understand the importance of Parliament. Parliament is the supreme institution in our democracy. It is none other than Dr. Ambedkar who said Parliament is supreme and it represents the sovereign will of the people. And India is a parliamentary democracy. Dr. Ambedkar was emphatic in rejecting the two-party system, in rejecting the presidential form of government. Ambedkar opted for parliamentary democracy, multi-party democracy. And India is a country with tremendous diversities. In such a country, there was a debate in the Constituent Assembly, as Mr. Surya Prakash was pointing out, that Washington-Jefferson great debate, cup and saucer debate. Then they discussed how to maintain checks and balances. If something happens in the People's House, Lok Sabha, and how the Rajya Sabha, the House of Council of States will have to respond to it. It is to give checks and balances. And Mr. Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan, who was the chairman of Rajya Sabha, he only said Parliament is not just a house legally or technically to pass some legislations. It is a deliberative body, and the concerns, the issues of the people and country will have to be deliberated. Even Mr. K.R. Narayan, who was chairman of Rajya Sabha, he said Parliament is the head and front of body politics of the nation, and Parliament should be upheld. It should never be undermined. Having said that, now the 250th session, it is a great journey for Indian Rajya Sabha in Indian Parliament, and it is upper house, and it is called the Chamber of Ideas, and people come there with great ideas, and that is what is expected. What is happening is another thing. What is expected, it is the house of or chamber of great ideas. And if you say, you started saying the Rajya Sabha began its first session in May 1952. In 1953 itself, there was a member who brought the issue for a discussion, that is about climate change, which we are discussing today, pollution, ecological changes, climate change. It was raised in 1953 itself. Rajya Sabha did. And as far as our friend reference to the nominated members, of course nominated members are supposed to be people of excellence who made contributions to different spheres of our social, political, cultural life, and that is the significance of these nominated members. And we had during my tenure, I saw there was many scientists. Mr. Swaminathan was member of the House. Whenever we talk about farmers' distress, agrarian problems, we always refer to Swaminathan Commission. He was member of that House, and many scientists.
So the expert views used to be there on those aspects. Expert views used to come in.
Yeah, that is what they used to give a lot of inputs for the debate. In a way, their views should be non-partial, non-partisan, but having the concern for the entire nation and people. That is one aspect. If there is any need to have relook, we should have a relook, because it is an evolving institution, and we should look for new issues and how to strengthen the parliamentary system and how to see that parliament works. In fact, I am sorry, I am not taking time. We are one party, or many others share my view. Parliament should work for more number of days. Now it is not working even 100 sitting days. And in a country like India, our parliament should be vibrant, and it should work for more number of days.
I believe working for more number of days is an issue where all of you would be on a consensus. But let me come back to the moot question, bring Dr. Singhvi here. On the journey of the upper house, Dr. Singhvi, and the way, all your colleagues here on the panel are pointing out that it has been mostly about, and the idea was also about, to ensure checks and balances. So has that been successful all over this journey? This is the 250th session we're talking about.
In a very large measure, yes. The three principal reasons given for not having upper houses have all fortunately been overruled when upper houses were created, and in many cases, certainly in the Indian Rajya Sabha's case, have been invalidated by experience. Those reasons included phrases like dictatorship of the unelected, obstruction of the upper house. We have had very good and learned friends talking of the Salisbury principle, something which came from Rhodesia and was in a very narrower context about some certain legislation which was deliberately obstructed in a racial context. Now, there will be many others, and some of the beauty of our Constituent Assembly is that they are reflected there. The American example is a good example anecdotally, but it is not fully apposite, as Surya Prakash ji has said, for the reason that both those houses there are elected, and both elected houses, unique to America, one is more powerful than the other, but both are elected. Now, coming back to India, I think the very concept of two heads are better than one. Ek se do bhale. It's a sounding board for democracy. It's also a very clear check and balance, and I am not talking politics. You see, you may today have one party in power in the Lok Sabha, tomorrow you may have the same party with a great majority in the Rajya Sabha, or vice versa, or different combinations. But the British parliamentary system actually is based upon the executive dictatorship model. Why? Because it's the executive which runs parliament. The executive is the one which brings legislation. The parliament cannot initiate legislation. Private member's bill is an exception, but you can't really initiate. The executive chooses, then gets passed. So the executive can tend to be overbearing. Now, if there is that tendency, then a second house, even where the same party has a majority, is definitely a better check. It's more broad-based. It is not subject to the vicissitudes of a particular constituency. The context and the perspective is much wider. All these fronts, on the whole, by and large, the Indian Rajya Sabha has acquitted itself very, very well. And two things before I end. I think, I don't know whether my friend Vinay ji wanted to hint at abolition of nominated members. It's every institution is only as good as the people you nominate or the people you appoint. Certainly, there have been bad nominations. Certainly, there have been people who were not intended to be filling this rather expert, very special kind of post. And some of the earlier nominations acquitted themselves very well. So, but I would not want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. There is scope for having genuinely independent, talented and expert technocrats. And I think on the contrary, provided, I mean it's not easy, but provided different governments take a pledge to do the right nominations, this number should be expanded, not diminished.
Okay.
Because this brings in a breath of fresh air. This brings in a very different perspective. And your three categories clearly, which will not come easily. One is the expert technocrat route, one is the talent route, and one is the very, very high academic route. And I think therefore they have a validity. Of course, you have to be careful about how you appoint. And lastly, I think Parliament is ultimately only as good as how collectively we make it. The upper house has had its problems. There is certainly greater divisiveness in the upper house than it was there in the earlier parts of the upper house. Certainly the 250th session may have more divisiveness because the whole atmosphere is more politicized. And other governments may also have had the same thing. But on the whole, it is time to stop thinking of the second house or the upper house as some kind of a rhoda or obstruction in the first house. It is actually a valuable aid. It can be and should be a friend, philosopher and guide to the lower house.
I am not seeking any abolition of this
I was
provision.
not sure what you were
The
hinting
only
at.
thing is that,
That was a suggestion.
My limited point is, let us review these provisions.
Okay. Suggestion
because
for
this
review.
assessment definitely helps us.
Certainly.
Correct.
Certainly.
Okay.
To strengthen the
Correct.
institution.
Okay, so all three of you seemingly are making the same point with a different approach altogether. Let me bring Dr. Keshwar Rao here. On the overall aspect, Dr. Rao, the journey has been quite eventful, and as all other panelists have pointed out. But in terms of this fulfilling the responsibility of putting in place those checks and balances, one, and two, ensuring that it plays that role of friend, philosopher and guide, as Dr. Singhvi was pointing out. How do you see the journey?
Well, look, all of my colleagues have held a strong brief for the, not your second one, the upper house. Upper house is not a second house. It is Jawaharlal Nehru who said, don't call one as an upper house and another as a lower house or the people's house. They are one. There is one parliament. There are no two parliaments at all, as far as we are concerned. Now, as far as the evolution, I will come to three quick responses. As my friend Surya Prakash said, there are umpteen number of states, like 80 states which have the have a bicameral system and have the two houses. So it is not that your Constituent Assembly that has conceived this or evolved this. Nonetheless, let us please understand, since brief is held very strongly, this essentially becomes a necessity for a federal setup where two separate states run. One is the central government, another is the state government. The coordination of this requires somewhere a joint sitting is necessary.
Okay.
Now, second, the diversity that you are subjected to, the cultural diversity to which you are subjected to, requires somebody to voice that other diversity, the diversities, and that only Rajya Sabha can do it, because we bring it. Now, as the Washington's example should be very good, the revisionary aspect of the Rajya Sabha, as Washington said, cool down, no fickleness, no emotional passing of the bill. So it withstood all that, the 250 sessions. Now, second strong point with it is, it's a continuity. The parliament, see, there's a change as far as Lok Sabha is concerned. Every 5 years you go out, but there has to be a continuity as far as the government is concerned.
Okay.
So here is another house which is continuous house. So Pandit ji said about this. I said there needs to be a continuity in a change. So when you amalgam these two, the continuity into a change return into the continuity is something which will do good for parliamentary democracy.
Okay.
When we talk of parliamentary democracy, we talk of the diversity. This is what it is.
Okay, so basically maintaining the continuity in the change. That's a quite interesting one. Dr. Singhvi, I'd like to come to you as well, but since it has been almost 20 minutes now and you've given all of you have given an overall framework and pointed out as to hows and whys of the upper house came into being. Let's now open the floor to the audience here. I'm pretty sure the young minds will have a lot of questions to ask. Let's begin from the last line and then we'll keep on coming to this one. Can we have the mic there, please? Yes.
Hello,
What's
sir.
your name and then the question, please.
I am Ravi Narayan from IIMC. As Dr. Singhvi said, pointed out the Salisbury doctrine of the Westminster. As we saw many obstruction in the Upper House, as they couldn't pass due to such obstruction.
Okay.
This is a clear. They are not, people's wishes are not getting fulfilled due to this reason. And my second point is disparity. When you come to the US system, they have equal representation for each state, as they have two number of center for each state. But in our country, the larger state having more representation, but the lower states are lacking representation in terms of number.
So the representation part, I guess, is pretty much settled because that's as per the population. But the obstruction and the disturbance on the floor of the house, which he is referring to. Let's have one or two more questions, related questions, and then we'll come to that. Yes.
All right. The Constituent Assembly envisaged the Rajya Sabha as this elder brother and a place of second thought. Now, what happens when a political party gains electoral muscle in the Lok Sabha and tries to subvert this role of this elder brother by going the ordinance way time and again? So what are the checks and balances that are there for this? Of course, there's the judicial review of everything, but then what is the legislative review of this of this process, of this loophole?
Okay. Okay. Let's begin with Dr. Singhvi, and then we'll come to Dr. Sahasrabudhe.
Important questions, and I should take them one by one, but three issues have been raised, and I'm sure my friends will have different views on this. Issue number one is about the Salisbury principle. I think it is totally out of context. I'll tell you why. The Indian Constitution, in a way, at least in structure, has the best of both the worlds. It perceives the possibility of obstruction by the second house or the upper house or the Rajya Sabha. The founders themselves anticipated it, and therefore provides a very neat mechanism. There is a set of bills which cannot pass through the, doesn't need to be passed through the upper house in case it decides to be obstructive. We know the name of that bill, we know the provisions, Article 110, etc. I will not trouble you with technicality. But the founders have created a mechanism that certain areas where you could obstruct, where national interest will suffer, you will get one say, you will have discussion, but in the ultimate passage you will have no role. So it's the best of both the worlds. So I don't understand how anything like the Salisbury principle can apply. Point one. Point two, there is, however, a possibility, and I'm not certainly talking politics or this government or that government, where governments will be tempted to use that what might be called a veto or an override of the Lok Sabha by way of the money bill route. That also is now actively under judicial scrutiny, and the Supreme Court has referred that matter from 5 judges to a larger bench. 5 is already large, but they have referred to 7 or 9. And there is a very powerful dissent already by Justice Chandrachud saying that you cannot use the money bill route to bypass the Rajya Sabha.
Okay.
Now, and thirdly, this judgment holds, and I don't want to be at all political, I'm just giving you a fact, that the attempt by the government some months ago to pass a bill amending the terms and conditions of 19 tribunals in one Finance Act in February 2019. One Finance Act was piloted which had 19 tribunals, change of terms and conditions of service. They said no, finance bill cannot do it because there is deemed to be camouflaged as a money bill. We must go to each of those 19 like CAT, CAT chairman or TDSAT or NGT. You must go to those acts and amend those acts.
Okay.
You can't use the money bill route. So therefore I think this is why we have a mechanism along with judicial review which can't contemplate a Salisbury principle. And one very quick thing, I'm sorry to take time.
No, that's okay, please.
The federal principle, my friend mentioned, I should have addressed that, is the single most important raison d'etre for the existence of the Rajya Sabha. It is truly, we conceived ourselves, America was a federation where independent countries gave up their sovereignty to become a nation. We are not truly federal. We were largely unitary because we copied the British model, plus we had partition. So the founding fathers were rightly fearful of fissiparous tendencies.
Okay.
So they created what an Australian jurist called a quasi-federal structure, which is mostly unitary, some federal features. But I think the single biggest guardian of the federal spirit, the diversity which he talked about, the fact that you have linguistic federalism, the fact you have detailed and very strong scrutiny of 356 now by the courts in the last 20 years, the fact that you have fiscal federalism, Today you can give, you are giving actually 42% of funds back to the states. Earlier it used to be 30%. The fact that you have Panchayati Raj, municipal decentralization, these are all structures of which the primary guardian is the Rajya Sabha.
Okay.
And should be so. So I think that is the other very, very important reason and rationale for the existence of this very important house.
Okay. Dr. Sahasrabudhe, your views on these two aspects?
No, I would only say that largely, I mean, there is no disagreement about the very important role that Rajya Sabha is supposed to play. But having said that, let me also say that the politics of the day, I mean, at various stages in the history of politics in India, I mean, post the creation of Rajya Sabha, there are instances that Rajya Sabha sounds as an obstructionist kind of taking an obstructionist approach because of various reasons. I mean, to be doing justice is important, and to be appearing to be doing justice is also important, as what they say.
Okay.
And Abhishek ji knows it more, I mean, better than me.
Okay.
And therefore, Rajya Sabha should have a very constructive role. It cannot be unmindful of whatever happens in the lower house. It need not toe the same line, I agree. But can you afford to be unmindful of that, and can you afford to be always confrontationist about that simply because you have some kind of a veto power with you? These are also the questions which at some point of time we will have to take into consideration.
Okay.
I want to add something
Yes,
to this.
yes, please.
One is the political part. Jawaharlal Nehru and Lal Bahadur Shastri are two prime ministers of India who enjoyed majority in both houses throughout their tenure. Okay. If you come to Indira Gandhi, she had it for a few years and then she lost it for a few years and then got back after 72. Rajiv Gandhi again enjoyed a majority in both houses. After that, our prime ministers have not had a majority in both houses.
Simultaneously.
Now, that includes Atal Bihari Vajpayee and now Narendra Modi. Narendra Modi got a clear majority in 2014 and again renewed in 2019. But he did not have a majority in the Rajya Sabha, it doesn't have. So the issue, when I look at the Constituent Assembly debates, they never dwelt on this aspect as to what would happen if that elected government is in a minority in the upper house. So then the idea of a deliberative body, something which will cool legislation, think wise men and women will sit there, all that is how it ought to be.
Okay.
But suppose you bring in the political element there, it disturbs this whole idea of the people electing a government and that government finding some problems in the upper house. So ultimately, it requires we are the most diverse nation in the world and we are federal. That is why the Rajya Sabha, as Dr. Singhvi and this mentioned, is very, very important. The composition of Rajya Sabha, I think, is devised to take care of that diversity and that federal idea.
Okay.
It also means that when we talk of Rajya Sabha, there has to be some give and take and a good coordination among political parties. It is very critical. Otherwise, everything will get stymied.
Okay. So, and that's exactly the reason why we have this. Yes, Mr. Raja.
No, first of all, we should understand Lok Sabha is directly elected. MPs are directly elected by electorate. But Rajya Sabha also, MPs are elected by elected legislators from different states. In a way, it is an indirect election. One should acknowledge that fact. And it is not to compare Rajya Sabha, Lok Sabha, which is superior, which is having more powers. No, both are equal. But as far as federal structure is concerned, I agree, Mr. Singhvi, theoretically it is unitary system, but practically it is a federal structure. That's what Ambedkar meant. Even with reference to Article 356, he made it clear, ordinarily Article 356 should remain as a dead letter. Only in extraordinary situations that should be used, and we must know that. That is why Rajya Sabha is called Council of States. And when you say obstruction, disruption, even in Parliament I never agreed with those words. No member is, no member wants to obstruct or disrupt. Why there is uproar in Parliament sometimes in Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha? Uproar is outside Parliament. People are agitated on various issues and members will have to reflect those concerns and articulate their problems effectively in parliament. That is how it is happening. In fact, I remember one very respected leader once made a comment, the disruption is also part of parliamentary process. I don't take the name, but what is happening today, if you take what the argument given by Mr. Surya Prakash, the tyranny of majority in one house should not be used to undermine the other house. And ordinances, why government should resort to ordinances? Ordinarily, government should not take that route, ordinances. That is where I am again raising that issue. Parliament should work for more days. And parliament is supreme, and the executive should be held answerable to parliament. Rather, parliament becomes some kind of taking fait accompli position, because the executive has done, parliament will have to endorse. That should not happen. Indian parliament should be a vibrant parliament, and it should reflect the will of the people. How to strengthen that parliament?
And both houses should sit for more days. That's what the suggestion there is. Yes, Mr. Keshwar.
Okay, I have a direct answers to you. Although I agree with all of them. Number one, obstruction is a very relative term. Let us not vague term in the sense. Obstruction, you mean where we are shouting, is not obstruction. Now, for example, the citizen bill has not come. Is it obstruction, or is it representing one part of a opinion? Now, your talaq bill has not been passed. Is it obstruction, or is it taking more time for them to think?
Okay.
See, this obstructionism which you are trying to talk is more a checks and balances, or a strategy adopted by one party in democracy. For example, human rights things, which need not come at all from a popular house, people's house. So it is taken up as Rajya Sabha in case it is like private bill, members bill. So this is something new. So it is not a clash or a controversy between two houses.
Okay.
It is people's voice versus the legislature, which has the supreme bodies, which has to respond to the opinions.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Rao, thank you so much. Let's go to some more questions. Yes, start from there.
Nakul Kumar. Sir, I want to ask, as the very idea behind setting up of Rajya Sabha was to keep a check and balance on the Lok Sabha. But what we are seeing nowadays is that political parties misuse it. How they misuse is that they want to give backdoor entry to the candidates who do not get elected in the Lok Sabha. So how we can reverse this particular trend? Because I see Singhvi sir as an exception, though he's an intellectual and he has been elected in Lok Sabha. But normally what I see is that people who do not get elected in the Lok Sabha are appointed in Rajya Sabha.
Okay. Okay. Another question there. Yes, please.
इस नदी की धार से ठंडी हवा आती तो है, नाव जर्जर ही सही लहरों से टकराती तो है, एक चिंगारी कहीं से ढूंढ लाओ ए दोस्तों, इस दिए में तेल से भीगी बाती तो है. Sir, as you all have been talking about more working of days of Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha and obstruction of between the sessions. Sir, if we talk about role of chairman in Rajya Sabha and speaker in Lok Sabha, do you see Mr. Om Birla and Mr. Venkaiah Naidu at that chingari, that they have played the role of that chingari in increasing the days of session and in increasing the productiveness or fruitfulness of that session? Because in last session, if we can see, like the productiveness of the session have increased.
Okay.
So has they played the role of that chingari in the parliament or democracy of this
Okay,
country?
so has the chair been successful? Yes, one more question there. Yes, please. Yes.
So we have always witnessed and seen the difference between the idealist view and realist view, and I feel the Indian democracy and parliament is the very idea, I mean the witness of this concept. I would like to ask, sir, what is that one idea on this 250th session, that what is the one idea, if at all allowed by the provisions, what do you wish to change in Rajya Sabha, or what changes need to be changed, need to be brought in at this 250th event?
Okay, quite a wonderful question. Let's begin with the last one. Let's begin with the last one. Yes, sir.
Can I answer the first question?
Okay. Okay.
That was about the persons nominated by political parties for Rajya Sabha elections. Okay, not the 12 nominations, persons chosen for election to Rajya Sabha from the states. You see, if you look at the Constituent Assembly debates and the whole purpose of constituting the House, it was said that these are going to be wise men and women, deliberative chamber, etc., more mature and so on, which would mean that generally political parties must adhere to that principle when choosing their candidates to Rajya Sabha. I must also tell you that in this long tenure of mine as a media person, having watched the two houses from the galleries, it is not as if there are no wise men and women in Lok Sabha. People elect a lot of wise men and women to Lok Sabha, but at the same time, it is very important to remember that the whole purpose of Rajya Sabha, the way it's constituted, that must be borne in mind by political parties. The other thing is, even in Constituent Assembly, apart from this, in fact, Mr. K.T. Shah moved an amendment that there must be experts appointed to the two houses for temporary periods. Suppose you have an atomic energy bill, you get an atomic expert for 3 months, he won't have voting rights, but he can participate and help the members understand issues and so on. Dr. Ambedkar in fact moved an amendment to that effect, he had proposed it and then cancelled it and said we will have these 12 nominated members to Rajya Sabha. Okay. I do believe that the 12 nominations, whoever in government, there is a purpose for that nomination, it is stipulated in the constitution and that must always be borne in mind, and the people of India will benefit greatly if the nominations are made keeping those things in mind, the point that Vinay gave.
So the specific nominations basically. Let's come to the last question, and I'll come to you, Mr. Raja, but let's go one by one. Let's start with Dr. Sahasrabudhe here. You know, the last question which was asked was about what is that one thing which we should do, or the House should do specifically, since you're a member of the House as well, on the 250th session of of the upper house, and that idealist versus realist sort of situation?
Well, I think the realist always should be attempting and trying to reach up to the idealist. Having said that, I am perhaps the junior most amongst all the members of parliament present over here. But within the short span of 3.5 years, what I have realized is that the parliamentary tools which have been there in place right since 1950s perhaps requires a relook. I mean, how long are we going with the same old archaic things of question hour and calling attention motion and this and that? Why can't, for example, if a minister wants to explain a particular piece of legislation, use a PowerPoint presentation to do that instead of giving a lengthy half-an-hour speech, which is not required perhaps. Okay. Therefore, some reassessment of the parliamentary tools to suit to the changing times, and also a greater and proactive role of the information technology perhaps in the deliberations is the need of the hour.
Okay. Mr. Raja?
When we talk of parliament, both houses matter, and we have a system called standing committee system. There the members work in a non-partisan manner, and the way they address the issues and bring more inputs, it is remarkable. And that is why Mr. K.R. Narayan, when he was chairman of Rajya Sabha, underlined the importance of the committee system. And we have this system, and in Rajya Sabha we have select committee system. Even the standing committee can give a report, and government can bring a bill, and if Rajya Sabha members think it needs to be further scrutinized, and they can demand it should be referred to select committee.
Okay.
And we have other joint parliamentary committees. For instance, we used to have one joint parliamentary committee on the welfare of scheduled caste and scheduled tribe. Now we have one joint parliamentary committee on the welfare of backward classes. And we have similar parliament committees on public accounts committee and such things. It is something unique for Indian parliament. We have two houses and different states, and not only linguistic differences. Now Rajya Sabha, Mr. Venkaiah Naidu has become chairman. During his tenure, he announced in house that is the members can speak in their respective languages. Mother tongue, yes. Mother tongues. It is, we are evolving. Parliament is evolving. Now 250th session, what is the one idea? That one idea will always remain. Whether you call it idealist or realist, Parliament should remain as a vibrant, sovereign institution in our democracy. Parliament is undermined. Parliament is undermined. Again, I refer to Mr. K. R. Narayan, who said it will lead to bloody, violent revolution. If Parliament is undermined, then democracy will die. That we should understand. Parliament is supreme in our democracy. And how to protect the sovereignty of Indian Parliament? And you keep talking about number in Lok Sabha, number in Rajya Sabha. And what is the mandate, what is the percentage of votes political parties get? And the time has come, we will have to think of electoral reforms, comprehensive electoral reforms. That is also an issue before the Parliament.
In fact, both things are quite, closely interrelated, the electoral reforms and the reforms in a bit of evolving the parliamentary tools which Dr. Sahasrabudhe was referring to, or even Mr. Raja is referring to. Dr. Singhvi, from your perspective, what is that one or maybe two things or a couple of things which we should focus on, as my friend, the young friend is asking here?
It's an important question, there are no clear answers, because we have to start with the caveat that all real, strong, somewhat unsavory reform which is needed ultimately needs that political consensus, the lack of which itself is the reason for having the problem in the first place. So you need to have that, nothing can be done without that consensus. But if you were to ask my wish list, number one, as a former chairman of a standing committee, I think the powers of standing committees, as my friend Raja has said, must be in fact enhanced considerably. Many of our friends will not know, these young friends, the amazing work which is done in committees. Unfortunately, certain amount of fractiousness and divisiveness in comparison to past decades is growing. But compared to the degree you can find in the Houses of Parliament, this would not even be 100th in the committee. Superb work is done, hard work is done, non-divisive, convergent work is done. I would believe that some of the power should be increased of suo motu action, of questioning, of going into things. Secondly, these committees, there should be a convention, if not a rule, by which their reports, unless for exceptional reasons to be recorded in writing, their acceptance and implementation should be the norm. It is already, you have to give ATRs and all that, action taken and all that. But I think the degree of implementation of committee reports must be increased by a convention which says the default mode is implementation unless for exceptional reasons to be recorded in writing. Because truly 90% of the fractiousness which the same members may display in the House of Parliament is missing in the committee. So it's a very valuable aid. And for God's sake, don't ever start televising committee proceedings. That's the one mistake you will make.
That decision
That's the one mistake you will make. There's a lot of debate going on. Like the American
journalists or the media houses are not the ones
like
to decide
the American. No, there's an actual proposal in Parliament. Like the American system, why don't you have televisation? One of the strengths is that we work behind closed doors. And at least I am very clear of the view. Apart from having chaired a committee, I know that how these things work. This will be the beginning of the end as far as the committee. The second and a quick second reform I would like is, in very egregious cases, and let me tell you, obstruction word is overstated. Depending on the power of the day or the government of the day, everybody thinks the other person is obstructing. A lot of the obstruction is not legislative. It is about what is happening outside. A lot of the so-called obstruction is because of lack of sensitivity to the demands being made legitimate, etc., etc. But yes, I agree that for very, very extreme and egregious cases, physical or others, perhaps the time has come to have a very, very non-partisan 3 or 5 member committee of the House. A very special body, not a committee, but 5 people who are across party boundaries, whom everybody respects in the House, looking into it and then taking some penal action against those extreme cases as an exemplar. But I would really, I think much depends on the identity of those 5 and the very extreme cases. Not everything which you call obstruction is obstruction at all. These are the 2 wish lists. Of course, the third one could be an increase in parliamentary time of sittings.
That's something which all of you have expressed the wish. Dr. Keshwar Rao, your point of view.
One point I would like to tell you, the parliament, the House, whether it's Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha, the parliament as such combined is evolving its own constitutionalism. Today, about the standing committees or the committee system that you are trying to talk about are doing such a good work. The importance that you said, I mean, the objection people say, the Rajya Sabha cannot look into the finance bills. He has referred to 110, whatever it is. Today, they are looking into, they are members of the finance committee. They are looking into it. They are members of the Public Accounts Committee.
Uh-huh.
You see, if you are taking up House as a deliberative body, where your views are expressed, it is not a decisive voice or not, but nonetheless you are heard completely, fully and appreciated too.
Okay.
And in the reports that we give, we incorporate them, we factor them. So this is what I am saying, it is evolving itself, and all objections that we have today, that there is obstructionism, and saying that is a realism, and also you are also saying that ideal. You see, there cannot be any idealism which cannot be real.
Okay.
In reality, if you cannot test it, how can it be an idealism at all? So understand this. This is what we are feeding to our young boys. An ideal should be something which should be practiced.
Okay.
Which could be practiced, which can be practiced. So there is nothing like our marrying these two. They are married, and the Parliament is evolving its own rules, outreaching all those objections.
Okay. Mr. Surya Prakash, I would like to bring you on a very specific aspect, and since you have written a lot and studied a lot with respect to the standing committees, the parliamentary standing committees, the kind of suggestions which have just come in from Dr. Singhvi here, to increase the powers of the standing committee, or maybe, enhance the way in which its recommendations are implemented, and also the very fact, as Dr. Singhvi is suggesting, that do not televise the parliamentary standing committee proceedings. So, what are your views on all these aspects?
The first point is that one of the really major parliamentary reform that we brought in was the institution of parliamentary standing committees. It was done by Speaker Shivraj Patil in 1993. This is an extraordinary development which has ensured specialization among members of parliament, more deliberative and non-partisan work within committees, and it will remain non-partisan so long as the cameras are out. So I fully endorse Dr. Singhvi's view. We are not ready to have cameras intrude into our parliamentary committees. We are not ready. It's not televised. It shouldn't be televised.
Okay, looks like a unanimous one out there. Dr. Sahasrabudhe, do you agree with that?
Yeah, entirely. I entirely agree.
So the other point is that if you look at the emergence and working of these two houses over 7 decades, it's not a small thing. Actually, we must congratulate our parliamentarians, our presiding officers. Parliament of India is central to our existence. It has worked in such a way, we all have our complaints about all the disruptions, this, that, but at the end of the day, starting with standing committees and many other things, it has worked in a way that it has kept this nation together, it has kept this diverse nation together and strengthened our democratic traditions.
Okay.
So it is an extraordinary thing, and this 250th session of Rajya Sabha, we must congratulate the presiding officers and our MPs.
Okay.
It's a very major event, and it's an event that will mark those who are in that house will, I think, reiterate their commitment to this larger democratic cause.
Okay, we have few more minutes left before we bring the show to an end. So let's go back to the audiences, and on my right side here, let's take in a few more questions, one more round as well. Yes, please, can we have the mic here?
My name is Sonu Anand. These years we are finding, sir, so much of encroachment of executive's power in the making of law, sir.
So basically the role of executive, that's what my friend is here referring to.
Hello, sir. My name is Satyam Pandey. I am from IMC. सर मेरा एक सवाल है कि मानसून सत्र के दौरान बहुत सारे बिल जो है वो अपर हाउस में रखे गए हैं, और आपने जैसा कहा कि अपर हाउस जो है वो ऊपर है, तो आप लोगों ने बहुत सारे बिल जो हैं एक दिन के अंदर कैसे पास कर दिए विदाउट डिस्कशन? बहुत सारे बिलों पे डिस्कशन नहीं हुआ और वो बिल पास कर दिए गए एक दिन के अंदर, लोकसभा और राज्यसभा दोनों से.
Okay, so looks like, the gist of all the questions here is how the discussion on several bills take place, the kind of time which is devoted to those particular discussions, the way the bills are passed from one house to the other, and the role of the executive here as well, as my friend was pointing out. We can start from anyone. Yes, Mr. Raja.
No, as far as Rajya Sabha is concerned, from my experience I can tell you, there are many ways to raise this issue. There is calling attention motion, there is short duration discussion, question and answer session. So you can raise issues and members of the as private member right to bring resolutions, to move draft bills.
Okay.
For instance, when I was in Rajya Sabha, recently I retired, I moved a private member bill on sedition, demanding the deletion of sedition clause. I moved that bill. Even today, it is being debated in public. Everybody is speaking about sedition. I moved a private member resolution on the issue of abolition of capital punishment.
Okay.
I moved, and I moved a private member resolution for extending the reservation benefits to SC, ST, OBC in private sector.
In fact, we've seen several important private members' legislation being brought.
That's what the members can do that. Members can do that, and Rajya Sabha allots time. And it is not that we don't want debate. In fact, we insist for debate. Without debate, no bill should be passed. Without proper scrutiny, no legislation should be passed. And in din, you are talking about obstruction, disruption, etc., etc. But in din, no bill should be passed. These are all our positions we have taken in Parliament.
Okay.
And it is a deliberative body, and let there be proper discussion, the proper debate, and let Parliament disposes, and the House let the House dispose. That is the approach everybody should have, and parties should have. That is how we function. After all, as my friend says, Parliament finally it keeps the nation united, and Parliament has its own powers. Executive powers, we don't encroach upon executive powers, but executive is not over the head of Parliament, and executive is answerable to Parliament, and Parliament, executive, judiciary, these are all organs of our state, and all their powers have been defined, and you don't make executive as a super authority in the country.
Okay.
Parliament is the supreme authority, super authority in the country.
Okay. Dr. Singhvi?
ये मानसून सत्र ऐसा था जिसमें सबसे ज़्यादा उत्पादन की प्रक्रिया हुई,
It was the
बहुत
most
ज़्यादा
productive
हुई
session.
और व्यापक रूप से डिस्कशन हुआ। ये बात सही है कि हमेशा ऐसा नहीं होता है, लेकिन आमतौर पे अगर आप 250 सेशंस का औसतन लेंगे तो उत्पादन अच्छा हुआ है। बीच में कुछ हुए हैं ऐसे समय जो कई कारणों से विवादित रहे हैं, लेकिन उसमें ये जो आखिरी सत्र था उससे बहुत अच्छा काम हुआ है और बहुत ज़्यादा व्यापक विचार विमर्श होता है। विचार विमर्श में समय कम है ऐसी बात नहीं है, लेकिन जो सुझाव है वो ये है कि जिस प्रकार से हमने अभी संसदीय समितियों की बात की, उसी प्रकार से मेरा मानना है कि जो निजी बिल, प्राइवेट मेंबर बिल जिसको कहते हैं, इसमें एक बड़ा सरल सुधार हो सकता है कि सरकार में, जहाँ तक मुझे याद है, अभी तक 250 सेशंस में 6 या 8 बिल पारित हुए हैं टोटल। 6 थे शायद या 8 थे, मुझे याद नहीं है। आखिरी वाला वो ट्रांसजेंडर वाला था जी, हमारे शिवाजी, जो तिरुचि शिवाजी ने मूव किया था जी। लेकिन ये क्यों नहीं करते सुधार कि सरकार बड़ी मात्रा में इनको अडॉप्ट करने की प्रक्रिया शुरू करे। देखिए, निजी बिल्स में 2 कैटेगरी होती है। एक होता है राजनीतिक, या सिर्फ एक भाषण देने के लिए या एक पॉइंट मेक करने की घोषणा करने के लिए। एक होता है प्रस्ताव जो बड़ा कॉन्क्रीट होता है, तथ्यों के आधार पर होता है, सुधार होता है और नई एरियाज होते हैं, जैसे ट्रांसजेंडर बिल था। तो अगर ये एक परंपरा चली आ रही जिसका कोई औचित्य नहीं है कि सरकार आम तौर पे कहेगी कि भाई हम आपका इसका नोट लेंगे लेकिन आप इसको पारित करने के लिए नहीं डालिए जी, तो मैं समझता हूँ सरकार को, हर सरकार को जो टेक्निकल बिल्स हैं जिसमें बहुत अच्छे सुझाव हैं, डेटा प्रोटेक्शन हुआ, ऐसे हुए, उनको अडॉप्ट करके खुद वो सरकार वोट करे प्राइवेट मेंबर के साथ, न कि वो कहे कि हम बाद में अपना बिल लाएंगे, आप छोड़ दीजिए इसको।
Okay.
ये सिर्फ परंपरा है, इस परंपरा का कोई संवैधानिक आधार नहीं है और ये आराम से बहुत एक अच्छा सौहार्द बढ़ाएगा।
And this will also prompt the members to come up with more unique kind of private members bill there as well. Yes, please.
See, one आप में जो स्केप्टिकल बन जा रहे हैं, बहुत यूथ सिनिज्म, हम लोग ये एनकरेज कर रहे हैं कि send experts, matured people to the house. Do you think we'll just select anybody? I have been the president of the party who selects and who gives these tickets. Do you think we just give like that? And are you trying to test the 14 lakhs of people who are voting for a certain person in Lok Sabha? आप उसे उतना टेस्ट मत कीजिए। सही बात है कि थोड़े जो आप लोग अनडिज़ायरेबल सोचते हैं कोर्ट्स, वो लोग आ जाते हैं, बट दिस हैव टू बी करेक्टेड थ्रू डेलिबरेशन एंड थ्रू द पब्लिक क्रिटिसिज्म दैट वी रिसीव इंस्टेड ऑफ गिविंग टू एनीबडी टिकट. द मोमेंट वी सी भाई बहुत से क्रिमिनल्स आ जा रहे हैं हाउस में, तो वी ऑलवेज आस्क ए पर्टिकुलर पर्सन इनके ऊपर कुछ केस है क्या, ये चुपके जो बने हुआ आया वो टिकट नहीं है. एंड पर्टिकुलर इन राज्यसभा इट इज़ नॉट दैट ईजी, एंड फॉर द एक्सपर्ट्स टू कम यू हैव दिस nominated business, 12 people coming in as an experts.
Okay.
And we as experts are concerned, this committee meetings where we really call the experts and interact with them, interface with them, we come to that.
Okay.
So Parliament always takes advantage or takes services from the experts, and there's no doubt.
Okay.
And don't try to run down those who got elected from 14 to 20 lakh people. And एक बैठ के और वोट देने वाले आप ही हैं. वो जो आदमी आया है हमारे पास, जिनकी हम लोग आज देखो चुनी करते हैं, वो आदमी अपने से ही इलेक्ट होकर आया है, अपने वोट से आया है.
ओके, डॉक्टर सहस्त्रबुद्धे.
मेरा जो भी यहाँ पर अभिप्राय आए उसको लेकर केवल एकमात्र सुझाव है
जी
कि पार्लियामेंट के अंदर, हाउसेस के अंदर जो भी होता है उसका बहुत यथातथ्य चित्रण मीडिया में आता है, ऐसा सामान्यतः नहीं होता. अगर पार्लियामेंट में बवाल होता है, कहीं ना कहीं चर्चा को रोका जाता है, तो बड़ी हेडलाइन बनती है. मगर बहुत सारे हमारे मान्यवर मित्र हैं जो 7-8 मिनट मिलते हैं मुश्किल से, मगर बहुत तरीके से अपनी बात को रखते हैं. राजा साहब है, सिंघवी जी है, हमारे दल के लोग हैं, बहुत सारे लोग
कई महत्वपूर्ण सुझाव आते हैं उसमें.
उनको कहीं 2 लाइन भी मिलती नहीं मीडिया में, क्योंकि मीडिया ये मानता है कि जो सनसनीखेज है वही बेचा जाता है. अभी हम तो सनसनीखेज बात नहीं करते, हाँ कई लोग नहीं करते, तो उनकी बातों को कोई उस मीडिया के अंदर स्थान ही मिलता नहीं. इस पर कुछ, और इसलिए मैं सारे युवा मित्रों को कहूंगा कि डोंट गो बाय व्हाट अपीयर्स इन द प्रेस. There is much more which doesn't appear in the press,
Okay.
and let us be aware
Okay,
of it.
there is much more to the parliamentary proceedings, than what is there in the headlines or on television channels. Let's have the final concluding comments of the show from Mr. Surya Prakash here.
Most important is I am of the view that there is need for parliament reform. Vinay Sahasrabudhe has made a very important suggestion. We must move with the times. You got to have a very modern, you have so much technology, this, that, use that in terms of the deliberations within the houses. Second, very major reform I would want from my side, in my wish list. When you make law for the country, we can fix a particular time in the week, a day. Please ensure maximum attendance, issue whip to all parties. Where law making, I see 40, 50 MPs, 60 MPs in Lok Sabha. When you make law, it is really pathetic, it should not happen. So this is one major reform I would like to see, that when you make law, the two houses, you fix a time for that, for passage of bills. You can club it all together. You know why? I'll tell you. The other day, I saw a bill to establish 7 All India Institute of Medical Science in the country. Sir, it was passed in Lok Sabha in 2 minutes. In fact, I had done an article saying Maggi noodles is faster or our Lok Sabha is faster. To establish 7 aims in the country, it took only 2 minutes. So this should never happen. I really look forward to that kind of reform.
Okay.
And we have exceptional people in our house. You have 4 parliamentarians sitting here who are examples of that, quality of MPs you have.
Okay.
And I think that is what we must look forward to and take forward.
Thank you so much, everybody, and thank you so much, Mr. Surya Prakash, Dr. Keshwar Rao, Dr. Singhvi, Mr. Raja, and Dr. Sahasrabudhe as well, and the young audience here. So there it is, in a nutshell, the detailed analysis of the magnificent journey of the Upper House of Parliament, the Council of States, that is Rajya Sabha, and some very, very important and interesting suggestions coming in from our panelists and the audience as well, such as perhaps strengthening further or empowering further the parliamentary standing committees, increasing the time to which both houses sit, as in the duration of the parliament sessions, and maybe giving more importance to the private members bill, which will further encourage the members to come up with more unique ideas. So these are some of the suggestions. I'm sure there are going to be many others as well. We'll continue to bring you the details of what is happening inside the parliament, not only the upper house but also the Lok Sabha. Keep watching Rajya Sabha Television.